Welcome to Freedom to Learn, the podcast that champions choice in education, defends parental rights, and exposes the harm caused by school unions. I'm Jenny Gentles, Director of Education Freedom and Parental Rights at DFI, the Defense of Freedom Institute in Washington, D.C. Congressman Kevin Kiley, who has represented California's 3rd Congressional District since 2023, recently held a hearing entitled Education Without Limits, Exploring the Benefits of School Choice.
America's education landscape is increasingly a tale of two models. On one hand, some states have used every lever of policy to limit the options available to families. These jurisdictions share certain perverse features. Students are assigned to a neighborhood school with few, if any, alternatives. Instruction is driven by top-down bureaucratic requirements with little regard for learning outcomes. Educators are given lifetime job security yet denied meaningful professional development. The same things are done year after year, impervious to changes in the world, technology, or the science of learning, with parents kept at arm's length through it all. This is the model behind American educational decline. It is the model that the Biden administration did everything possible to reinforce. Fortunately, a second model has gained significant traction in recent years, and it flips every aspect of this failed model on its head. Parents select a school that is right for their child. Educators receive the support they need and are expected to perform. Schools that fail to get results lose students and eventually may cease to exist. Those that succeed attract more students and continue to innovate and grow, with parents in the driver's seat through and through. This is the school choice model.
Representative Kiley attended public schools. He's the son of a special education teacher, and before attending Yale Law School, he was a 10th grade English teacher in inner city Los Angeles. Before coming to Congress, he served as a deputy attorney general in California and a member of the California State Assembly. Congressman Kiley, welcome to Freedom to Learn.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
How did you develop your views related to education policy? I know you were part of the Teach for America program and taught in inner city Los Angeles. Did that play a big role for you?
It absolutely did. And, I went to a public school myself, a very good public school. So I certainly am a believer in the capacity of our public education system to produce good outcomes and to provide a strong education. But then I also, as a high school teacher, saw the other end of the spectrum where I taught in Los Angeles Unified School District, which has some of the very worst education outcomes of any district in the country. I saw how the failed education policies in California have spawned very wide achievement gaps, about the widest in the country, how so many kids are advancing through the grade levels far, far behind, and how that's leaving them at a major disadvantage when it comes to success in college and careers and life and beyond. And so it was really probably that experience of being a classroom teacher, doing everything I possibly could to help my students succeed, but seeing all of the systemic barriers that stood in the way that catalyzed a desire to get involved at the level of public policy and try to reorient the system towards one that would better serve students.
Well, you're certainly involved now. You chair the U.S. House Education and the Workforce Committee's subcommittee on early childhood, elementary, and secondary education, the K-12 subcommittee. And I want to delve into what transpired at your subcommittee's recent school choice hearing. But I want to first discuss the impact of prolonged school closures. You seem to see and warn about the harm before other elected officials. So I just want to thank you for that. As a parent who was directly impacted, it really meant a lot to me to hear you speaking up about it. But how did you know what we were going to have happen with these school closures?
Yeah, well, thank you. And I'm sorry for what you had to go through as a parent and so many millions of others in California and across the country. But I think that, the evidence was pretty clear from the early days of COVID that we knew about, the relative harm to people based on age level and how children were the least at risk. We had a lot of data on transmission within schools, community transmission, mortality risks, and so forth. And so we had a pretty good sense, like from a couple months in, the risk. And then on the other hand, we had a very clear evidence of the harm of closing schools and the ways in which it was, really just stunting kids' development and learning in so many different ways. So it just seemed to me so very clear from the earliest days that the cost-benefit analysis, for the very least, was to allow parents to have the choice whether to send their children to in-person school or not. And then at the same time, it was so clear that the agenda of closing schools was driven by special interests and indeed by the same political forces that were responsible for the failure of our schools in the first place. And Gavin Newsom was the very worst offender. He is the number one beneficiary of funding from the teachers associations in California. And lo and behold, he ended up ordering the longest lasting school closures of any governor in the country, to the detriment of so many kids. In my community, by the way, in Placer County, where I represent and represented at the time as a member of the legislature, we actually opened our schools earlier than any place else in the state. We had to sort of get very creative about doing that and jump through all kinds of hoops. And, but it took a lot of courage from school board leaders to do that. But as a result, our kids actually did a lot better than across California, and we had better public health outcomes as well.
Well, I live in Virginia, which was one of the worst states for prolonged school closures. And I have appreciated when I've seen you hold up that chart in congressional hearings that shows, yes, California was the worst, but Virginia is right there, almost the worst, because we need to loop back and remember that these abysmal academic outcomes, the doubling of chronic absenteeism, it didn't just happen. Right. And a germ didn't just cause it. These were very specific policy decisions that were made despite the evidence, as you mentioned, and at the behest of external forces that did not have students' best interests in mind. And so continuing to remind people that this just isn't this thing that happened and it had to happen, but this is something that can never happen again, and that we must prioritize ensuring that students are served well going forward is so important. So thank you again for your role in getting that message out. You recently chaired a hearing on school choice. It was called Education Without Limits, Exploring the Benefits of School Choice. And you talked a fair bit about charter schools at the hearing, particularly in your opening remarks. What's the state of the charter movement in California right now?
Well, there's a lot of very successful charters in California, although the state has done everything possible to get in their way, to limit their growth, to limit their autonomy and freedom. There's really been two tracks, in fact, of the war on charters in California, which kicked into high gear as soon as Gavin Newsom was elected governor and took office in 2019. One of the very first things he did out of the gate was to effectively declare war on charter schools. And there were a number of bills introduced to actually cap the number of charters that were allowable in the state, to limit the ability to authorize charters, or to give districts, which are the sole authorizers, essentially the discretion to deny a charter for any reason, to limit appeals of charter denials. So all of these ways in which the state has tried to stop charters from opening, or to close those that are in existence, or to prevent them from getting reauthorized. And then at the same time, they've had sort of a concurrent track, which I would call the sort of death by a million cuts track, where they re-regulate charters, where every new regulation that comes up, they apply it to charters as well, or they apply even existing regulations that don't apply to charters and take them to apply to charters, which defeats the whole purpose of a charter school, which is to liberate the school leaders to create their own education model that then can, succeed or fail on its own terms, and can attract parents or not attract parents, depending on the desirability of their educational product. And so that's unfortunate. It's especially given that the evidence is so clear that charters have been, perhaps the best hope for kids in a lot of underserved communities. There's so many just amazing examples. I talked about Success Academy and KIPP at the hearing, but there are a lot of others. But on the other hand, there are a lot of other states where the charter movement continues to grow. We have several million kids that are being served by charter schools right now in the U.S., and I think that under the current administration, we're poised to see that grow.
Right. With eternal vigilance poised to see that grow, because the charter movement's been around for 30 years. You think that things would be on a positive, smooth trajectory given their success, but no, there's always these external forces trying to thwart and regulate and constrain educational options for students, for educators, and for parents. Are there charters in your district? Because your district is a bit rural, right?
There are charters. My district is kind of a combination of suburban and a little bit rural, and then just like a lot of public lands. So we actually have great public schools in my district, and the area where I live, and that constitutes the bulk of my population, is where I grew up and went to school myself. So we've got great traditional public schools, but then we also have some great charter public schools and other education options. So, for example, there's one school called John Adams Academy that is really grounded in a classical education model. If you think of like Hillsdale, the way they run their university, it's very similar in terms of the orientation. And so they have, a waiting list in the thousands or something like that, and is a very popular option for parents. But I think it's a good example of how, sometimes we think about charters as offering an option to students whose neighborhood school is failing or who don't have any other options, which is probably where they've had the most powerful impact. But charters also have a role to play in every community, even if there are very good public schools, because it provides different options, a different approach for different types of students.
I love hearing about the classical education model. I think that we'll be hearing a lot more of that going forward, because there is a growing awareness of that and a growing demand. And that can be through the charter model, but also through private schools and homeschool co-ops and other ways of delivering that classical education. Okay, so let's talk about the hearing a bit. It was, you did address charters in your opening remarks, and there was some commentary about charters throughout the hearing, but the witnesses were largely focused on private school choice, scholarship programs, tax credit scholarship programs, education savings accounts, other options like that. And a lot of the attacks on school choice were focused on those kinds of programs. And I sat behind the witnesses and struggled to keep my face in neutral expression, because there were a number of very outrageous claims that were made about school choice. In fact, all of them. They just there wasn't a cohesive narrative. They just kind of threw everything at it, everything that's ever been said that's critical. That's right. So were you surprised by anything that you heard?
Not really. I mean, we've heard it all before, right? These just kind of standard talking points that they throw out there. I mean, I guess that, one that was particularly rich was they focused a lot on, well, what about rural areas where there's only one school, so you can't have school choice? And it's like, well, that's actually exactly why we need different tools available and different options for families, so that we're able to reach students of all backgrounds in every type of community to give them options. I mean, their solution was, well, if that school just isn't any good, then tough luck, you're out. I think that Ms. Levin said, you can lobby the legislature to get more funding. And then, well, okay, but my child is in school right now and isn't being taught to read. That's not a lot of help. So yeah, it was fairly predictable, I think. And obviously, the talking points are sort of impervious to evidence and are not at all grounded in what's actually happening with families that are able to take advantage of these programs.
Impervious to evidence, and the evidence was brought by a number of the members of Congress, but also by one of your witnesses, Michael McShane, Dr. Michael McShane of EdChoice, went through a number of the studies that have shown the impact in a positive way on outcomes, academics, improvement to the results for the traditional public school students in the areas where you have choice, and civic and engagement among students who have participated in these. He brought a lot of good evidence and good news, and that was great to hear. But there was also lived experiences there in the hearing. You had two witnesses, one who had benefited from school choice in Ohio as a student, and another as a mother benefiting from Arizona's education savings account. And I was particularly surprised that a member of Congress was insistent that $7,500 in an education savings account was not sufficient for her to provide services for her student with dyslexia. So we had evidence from studies, from lived experiences, parents and students, but still a denial of the hope that the education freedom brings and the improved outcomes that it brings. Any thoughts on what the witness brought? You had a kind of testy exchange with the witness who was not a supporter of school choice.
Well, I was, number one, I thought that she should have disclosed right off the bat that she was there on behalf of the teachers' unions that fund her organization. So that wasn't disclosed. And then Mr. Owens sort of got her to reveal that she attended a very expensive private school herself, which, look, I'm not going to hold that against anyone. But something maybe she should have disclosed as well, that, look, I had this opportunity, and then whatever she wants to say. But I thought it was just starting from there a little disingenuous not to disclose those things right off the bat. But then, at the end of the day, the ultimate sort of, takeaway from her testimony is that she and those she represents, in this case being the Democrats on the committee, are perfectly content just to let our public school system continue to fail. When you look at the fact that education outcomes in the United States continue to plummet, we just had the nation's report card that came out, and we are falling further and further behind. And that's our kids in underserved communities that are falling further and further behind, and achievement gaps are getting wider and wider, and they are just fine with that. They have no solution for it whatsoever, other than just saying we need to throw more money in. And the great thing about that talking point for them is you can always use it no matter how much money has been provided. You can always just say the solution is more money, even though all the evidence shows that there's no relationship. In fact, the relationship has been an inverse one on the national level. The more money we've spent, the lower our education outcomes have gotten.
I think the specific claim during the hearing was that the low NAEP scores are justifications for fully funding Title I, and that term of fully funding is never quantified. It's just more.
That's right.
Right? That means more. The thing is, the nation's K-12 education system did receive more, and in fact, more than what anybody could conceive of fully funding, in the form of the ESSER funds that Congress appropriated over 3 bills, and there was $190 billion of supplemental emergency funding during the COVID era that went through the Title I funding mechanism. So in fact, that $190 billion was that fully funding, and yet we still have these abysmal outcomes, particularly for the lowest performing students. They continue to decline, and we have increased achievement gaps despite all that federal funding. I was surprised the number of members who recognized the problems in public schools, maybe seemingly like not understanding that they were defending a failed status quo by saying we need to get our public schools back up to speed. Public schools are deeply segregated, a member said. Public school funding scheme is inequitable, another member said. And then finally, one member said that these school choice programs allow a handful of students to get away while the vast majority are stuck behind in a failing system. Okay.
Right.
Why are you defending this failing system that's inequitable, that's racist? That was really, another surprise for me.
Totally. The implication is they'd like everyone to be left behind in the failing school system. And of course, the claim is flawed on its face, because the beauty of school choice is that by creating more options, that actually catalyzes change in the entire system, because schools are forced to find ways to try to retain students, and they offer more programs. And so the evidence has borne this out time and time again. I mean, it was particularly revealing when one of the members of the Democrat minority on the committee said that, she lambasted her own state of Florida for its school choice programs. Well, Florida has the best education outcomes in the country, not just for those who take advantage of the school choice programs they offer, but statewide. And so you would think that'd be the kind of model that we want to to replicate, as opposed to their ideal state of California, where we've had single party rule, where the most powerful interest in the state is the teachers union. And according to data from even pre-COVID, we had the second worst education outcomes in the country when it comes to kids who are on free or reduced lunch, which is a measure of poverty. It's a measure of how badly we're failing our students who need help the most. And yet California has added tens of billions of dollars to education spending just in the last handful of years.
Yeah, I'm from Florida originally, went to the K-12 public education system when it was near the bottom. And then decades later, decades of having these school choice programs, we do see it moving up towards the top. And you described it as the public system in need of positive disruption. And it's a positive disruptor. This is good for not just the students who are participating, but the students in the public system as well.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit more about unions. Just your thoughts on the impact that unions have on K-12 education.
Well, it's just become an interest group that politicians cater to, and obviously the funding is derived from being able to just automatically deduct a cut out of each teacher in the traditional public school system's paycheck. And so they have a financial interest in making it so there are as many teachers as possible within the traditional public system and as few as possible outside the traditional public school system. It's just a matter of basic economics as far as they're concerned. And then they, use that funding to build up a war chest that is largely used to fund political activities and to advocate for policy that isn't necessarily student-centered. And so in California, we've seen that dynamic entrench itself probably more powerfully than anywhere else in the country. And the end result of it is that it results in policy that's not only not student-centered, but not really teacher-centered either, in terms of what we would actually want to attract good people to the profession, to retain them, to provide professional development, and so forth. So it's one of the major problems facing our public education system, and it's one of the reasons why it's declined so much in California and nationwide.
Really appreciate you focusing on school choice in an early hearing this Congress. Will you be probing into that role of the teachers unions at all in your role as subcommittee chair?
I'm sure we will. I mean, I think that, at the end of the day, what we want to do is advance good education policy. And so that will require identifying the barriers to that and how we can overcome those barriers. But look, I mean, we have, I think, a tremendous opportunity right now. We have a White House that is very much committed to school choice and education reform. We have a lot of great examples in states throughout the country. We've got great leadership on our committee with Mr. Wahlberg and others. And so, and there's, I think, a mandate from the public as well, which has witnessed what happened during COVID, which has witnessed what's happened in terms of parents' rights being trampled on left and right, and understands the perils of our public education system's decline and what it means for our country's future. So I think that in view of all those things, we really have an opportunity to catalyze tremendous reform, to open up tremendous opportunities for millions of kids. And so I'm excited to be able to play a small role in that as the chair of the K-12 subcommittee.
Well, one final question, and this is outside the scope of your committee. In your opening remarks at the hearing, you mentioned your support for the Educational Choice for Children Act, ECCA. Mm-hmm. How do you think that the ECCA, this federal tax credit, could benefit K-12 families and students in California and nationwide?
Yeah, well, it would be great for California because we don't have any such school choice options within our state, like states like Florida or Iowa or Arizona or many other states do. So at least it would open up an avenue of choice for some students in the state. And it might be a relatively small number, just given that it's a $10 billion tax credit kind of spread out across the 50 states. But nevertheless, it would introduce an element of choice. And I think that, that would be something that would matter to a lot of families. And as we talked about, could result in broader changes, positive changes as well.
Well, Congressman Kiley, thank you for your time today. Thank you for your commitment to education freedom and parental rights. And thank you for joining Freedom to Learn.
Of course, thanks for having me, and thank you for what you do to advance such an important cause.
Freedom to Learn is a production of the Defense of Freedom Institute. You can learn more about DFI at dfipolicy.org. If you have feedback or suggestions for future podcasts, please reach out to us at podcast@dfipolicy.org. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.